Yeah, biblical generosity specifically. And yeah. Uh, uh, Adriana, don't distract me with with truths, okay? Uh, so actually, in all honesty, this topic is probably one of the hidden scariest topics for me as a Christian living in the United States of America, being in the richest nation in the world, like historically rich, uh, like a kingdom that rivals any other great kingdom through all of history, and having provision, and having uh, I'm able to support my family, and I'm able to live here and serve and pastor here and work, and I have a house, a roof over my head, I have food on the table. And so many people don't. And the Bible is so clear on this point of us being responsible to take care of those who are in need. And so that's tricky as a Christian who's received so much from the Lord, and uh, and then where do I go from there? How do I actually be generous? To what degree do I give to others? So it's a pretty important topic for us in where God has us in our lives. And just to summarize what we're going to go over for the whole month, if you want to put up the calendar, do you have the? Yeah, no, the other one has dates on it. Nope, didn't do that one. Okay, never mind. So I'll just say it verbally that for today we're going to go over why do we give? Like, why are we generous? Next week we'll talk about what do we give? What are we generous with? The third week we'll talk about who do we give to? Who are we generous toward? And then we'll have a closing discussion on the last week of the month. So today is... we're going to be reading, we have 3 points to our topic today. You can put those up on the screen. These are our 3 points. Why do we give? Because God has given, God will provide, and God is moving. For each of these points, we're going to read a handful of verses and then have a question for us to discuss. Now, these verses are probably verses that you've read, in some cases, over and over again, you have memorized. In some cases, you've read them a few times and you're familiar with them. What's impactful about these verses is when you stack them on top of each other and you read them as we're going to read them today in a line, it gives you a stronger impression of how important generosity is for Christians, for those who follow Christ. So we'll start with the first point there, God has given. We'll start with the basics, the very beginning. Does anybody want to guess where we're going to start? Genesis 1:1. Nice. It's awkward if you guess wrong for that question, yeah? Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Who created? God. What did he create? Everything. God created the heavens and the earth. So God has, by definition, from the very first verse in the Bible, we know everything that exists, everything that we have is from God. You cannot credit anything to yourself alone, myself alone. You can't say anything happened by happenstance apart from God. Everything has been given by God. Genesis 1:26, building off of that, then God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness." So God has given us ourselves, has given us humanity, and in his image, as image bearers, let them have dominion. So not only has he given us life in our lungs, and a special life at that, an image-bearing life of God, a life that reflects God himself. But in addition to that, he's given us authority or dominion, rule over the entire world, over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. So men and women, there's no distinction. Both are created equally, and both are created with that job to rule over the earth equally. Then God blessed them. So God has given us any blessing that we have. God blessed them. And he said to them, be fruitful and multiply. He's given us the ability to produce fruit in our lives and to multiply and grow, fill the earth, and then subdue it, again, as part of our job. Our job is to rule over the earth, have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. So not only has God given us everything, but God has entrusted part of his creation to us to manage on his behalf. So our roles and what our lives, our whole purpose has been given to us from God. Romans 14:8 says, for if we live to the Lord, and if we die to the Lord. Therefore, whether we live or die, we are the Lord's. Everything we have is actually the Lord's things, including life itself. Everything we have is his. Ephesians 5:20, giving thanks always for all things to God the Father in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. So when we remember that God has given us everything, given us our very lives, has created the whole world for us to live in, has given us our responsibilities, has given us what our purpose is, has given us all of our physical, tangible things. When we remember that and everything that we're called to, we're humbled by that fact, and we're driven to be thankful to the Lord, to be in a state of thankfulness. 1 Timothy 6:17 says, command those who are rich in this present age not to be haughty, or in other words, to be humble, nor to trust in certain riches, but in the living God, who gives us richly all things to enjoy. He gives us things to enjoy and let them do good. He also gives us things to do good with them, that they may be rich in good works, more important than riches that we would keep to ourselves, ready to give and willing to share. God has given us everything that we have, and we're thankful for that. Therefore, we get to enjoy it, and we get to share it. God has given us those things to enjoy and to share. So, God has given everything we have to us. That is something we know maybe, but let that sink in deeply. And then our question for us to answer: why does God give more to some people than to others? Because when you are wrestling with the idea that everything you have is God's, and He's given you everything in the way of entrusting you with everything to manage on His behalf, when you're wrestling with that idea, you jump to either, why does someone else have more than me? Or you jump to, why has God given me what He's given me and not given someone else what He's given me? So why does God give some people more than others? What do you guys think? Thanks for playing.
Go ahead, Adriana.
Oh, well, I mean, it's because he can do whatever he wants, so, basically, and so, and then he entrusts those that are good stewards, and then they usually get more because of that. I mean, it's kind of a rule in there. But if you don't get it, it doesn't mean that you didn't deserve it. It's just, that's just what he does. He's, sovereign. So just like some people suffer and some people don't. Some people have, it's just, it's all part of his plan, or as part of the way he wants things to be done in the way they work, in the way whatever we're part of, because we're all part of this huge thing that we don't even know about. Other than we're supposed to be, mindful and generous, and so I work for very wealthy people, and they're Christians, and I remember I was always the single mom struggling, and I've never been, in the thought of my head, I never thought, well, how come they don't just give me some of their money? I never thought like that. However, I remember I'm struggling, it's hard, I'm working hard, I'm hurting, and I was talking to my coworker who's also a Christian, and the owner walks in, and I kind of like, try to not show her I was crying, and she could see that I was crying, and then my friend just said, yeah, she's just having a hard time. Being a single mom's not so easy sometimes. And then she just turned to me and she said, I'm really sorry that you're feeling sad, and I don't know why God has blessed me and my family so much. I don't know why I've been blessed to grow up in a life of provision. But I also know that God's sovereign. And I don't know, it was interesting to me the way she had, the take on it. So I never thought of her as being a greedy person, and they do so much for so many people, and they run, communities to help other people, and so I respect them in that regard, but, I just never felt like I was greedy, or they're greedy, or that I'm in a weird position about that. And then, of course, years later, there's all kinds of things that happen, and I'm in that situation now, so, just like, wow.
Well, that point that you bring up about, and that Brian, you were echoing, about God is God, and he's sovereign, and he can do whatever he wants. That's not an easy concept for people to understand. Definitely difficult for non-Christians to understand, but even difficult for Christians to understand, because we want to see the fairness. Like, we want to be able to track how this is fair and how this makes sense, and to trust that God is doing what is right, even when things don't look fair to us when we're looking at it, is really, really hard for people to do. On top of just knowing that he has the right to make the decisions that he wants to make as the maker and giver of everything, is also tough for us to understand.
Yeah. It says in his word that he shows no favoritism. So, yeah, it's like you can be following God, but you can be blessed really with what, like health. Yeah. And then, but you can be a Christian that's following God, and you go through a struggle, or you go through suffering. They both are following God, but their lives are designed differently. And so he shows us and he tells us no favoritism, or, and any other category amongst that,
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important to first know that, if you know God, you know that he is just, so that any decision he makes is completely fair. That's a presupposition that we bring to the table when we're dealing with stuff that we don't understand, or stuff that we don't know of, or God doesn't give us all of the information. So when we come up against something he hasn't taught us, or he hasn't shown us, why'd you do it this way, God? He hasn't told us why. We have to trust that he's just because we know him to be just. Did someone over there have a...
The first thing that came to my mind is we all are given different gifts and talents. And so not everybody is musically inclined. Not everybody is, can build a house. Not everybody knows how to tend the animals. That was the first thing that came to my mind, because it gives us different because we know that the giving and the living part of our life is to serve Him, not have idol worships like you want to have the biggest house in town or you want to have the fanciest dog. So that was, you know, and I know many, a poor person is much happier than many wealthy people.
That was my
Sure.
point is a lot more responsibility with a lot more money.
I think it's easier when you focus on the fact of His justice and you are grateful for what you have. You see the big blessings in your life.
Yeah.
And God's made stronger through our weaknesses.
So, Kat.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it could also be a part of a test to see how we respond to the designation of these are the steps I have for you that I want to unfold for you, and see how you proceed from there, and then kind of alter it accordingly, you know.
Yep, that's very wise. The Bible talks about if you're faithful to the little things, God will give you more things. And you can see it as a test. That's not inaccurate. Maybe an additional helpful way of seeing it is that He's not going to give you enough to overwhelm you. And so if you can't even handle what He's given you without being overwhelmed, you definitely wouldn't be able to handle more. And so He's waiting until He can help you grow with what He has given you before He would give you more than that.
Well, if you think of it as being all of God's anyway, then, you know, we're inheriting, you know, we have everything because we're inheriting it all out. And this little, you know, mist of our lives is a mist for what we have with the Lord. And so, you know, I mean, from someone that had parents that grew up in a different country and were third world country, I mean, they think America's just rich. And so, you know, when we went to Goodwill to get clothes when we grew up, you know, we were thinking we were really blessed to be, you know, my parents used to always say, you know, my dad he was in the war. He had no food because I ate once a week, you know, and so I didn't get it. You know, I'm born in this country, and then we went to El Salvador, and it was cold water in the tub, and it was just like, what do you mean cold water? You know, I mean, just those things that we're spoiled with that we don't even recognize. But anyway.
That's a good point as well, which I was leading with from a personal note for the study today, but the amount of riches that we do have, it's all in comparison. If you're comparing yourself to the mansion down the street, it'll seem like you don't have very much. But if you're comparing yourself to the majority of humanity on earth right now, we're all in the top 5% for sure, if not more than that. Tough things, yeah. The other thing that's important for to answer this question, in addition to what we already mentioned, is that God values things as rich differently than what we value as rich. And He values eternal riches, and we tend to value finite riches. And so that's not all of it, you know, like practically speaking, it is way harder to live when you're eating once a week than when you have a meal anytime you want. It's real. We live in the physical world. That's real. But that will fade at some point. Even if you're like that till you die, if you get to be with the Lord, then you'll never go hungry again. And what you will have is the eternal riches that you built up by being faithful to the Lord on earth.
Could it be an example like this? I I have a client, dementia, so, you know, and then recently went to be with the Lord, and, you know, maybe the Lord's an extension of, you know, the eternal, you know, whatever it looks like. He had dementia here on earth for a moment, but,
Yeah.
you know, preparing him for something like, I don't, you know, that could be for, you know, whatever that may look like for eternally. You know,
Yeah.
God knows what that looks like eternally. You know, of course, you know, being gone from that, you know, now he's with the Lord.
Yeah.
But, you know, for having, you know, for the dementia part, you know, the mind gets older, and, you know, there are things behind it, you know, but he had it, you know, and, you know.
I love my story of my dementia dad. So my father was not allowed to just say anything to me in a way of blessing me. He was married to a woman that was extremely jealous, and so for most of my life, I didn't have my father in my life. And then he got dementia, and as it progressed, he didn't recognize the rules anymore. Wasn't afraid of the wife, and he started saying he loved me.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I walked in the room, I was the person he remembered,
Mm-hmm.
and which is totally the Lord and healing. And so I just sit there and go, wow, you know, in his, what we would have called as, you know, suffering, for him, it was such a blessing for anyone that was around him. He was the kindest, sweetest man, and all of his inhibitions were not there anymore, because he didn't have anybody there telling him how to speak, or talk, you know, telling him he couldn't, or judging him. So it was really a cool